already. For number 10, manage employees, appoint the employee and the employee import. So this is another way that clients import employees, is they import them via the build system import. Okay, so you can appoint them on the front end, or you can import them when you have 50,000 employees like Smolin has and IIH had, then it becomes necessary to use the employee import. Okay, so on the agenda, we're first going to have a look quickly at the flow, the employee import flow. Staging the data for import. So it can be done via the API and the CSV file, via the front end, and via direct database connection. So these are the three ways that you can use to stage the data. Then before we import the data, we sometimes need to run scripts on the data to sanitize the data, to get it in the correct format for import. Okay, so sort out some of the anomalies that we get in the data that is possible to sort out, and that makes sense. You can't update the employee number with a pre-import step to be something completely different. Okay. Then after the pre-import, we do the standard import. So this is the import that runs no matter whether you stage the data via the API or with a direct database connection or via the front end. This is the import that physically imports the data. So there's validation, there's the actual import, and then there are regular tasks that execute after the import. Some of whom you might have learned about during this module mastery, but we'll touch on them. And then the post import. Okay, so let's start. The flow. The flow is quite simple. It should be simple. You stage the data. You do perform pre-import actions on the data. You import the data, and then there are post-import actions. I'll give example as well of the different types of pre or post-import actions there might be. Okay, staging the data for import. The API can be either stage the data as a single record or stage the data in a CSV file. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at the solution. Just going to open the solution from my side to open version 8. So import.ps1 is a PowerShell script that we developed, developed it, that can be used to take a flat file and send that flat file to our API. Okay, let me quickly share the file with you. Let me show you the file. Let's go to Solution Explorer in the root of version 8. No, not that. There is folder for PowerShell, but I don't think it's part of the build files. We just open it in Windows Explorer. Quickly going to navigate to it. PowerShell scripts, and there's import.ps1. I'm going to show you import.ps1 and show you config.json. So not going to go into depth into the technical detail. This is config.json. if you look at it, it shows where the import file is situated, what the connection string to the database is if you make a direct connection to a database, what the SQL query, what the table name is that you execute. There's even parameters for Sage, URL endpoint for Sage if you get your data from Sage, what the batch size is, how many records at a time, how many times must the record be retried, what is the API base path, in other words, what is the endpoint, the Signify endpoint, where you're going to drop this data and import it. API token, should the queue be preserved, timeout, mappings. The mappings is obviously your client has a file with column A, B, C, D, E, and F. You must map column A, B, C, D, E, and F to the staging table. So this mapping will map A to G, will map B to H, and so forth. Okay. You have the PowerShell script. For those of you who has worked with PowerShell script before, Gert, have you worked with PowerShell script before?
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not the expert on it. So
As developers, we only work on PowerShell when we really need it, then all that. All right, so the PowerShell script takes the file, gets all the parameters from config.json and executes the import. So these are all the different steps that it takes to execute the import. So not gonna go into extreme detail here, but you read the config file, you store the parameters, you validate the API base path, and at the end of the day, you want to get to a point, and I think it's here somewhere downstream, where you execute the API. See if I can see it offhand. Where you invoke the method and send the file or send the data to the API. And it is somewhere down here. Okay, so we give clients this file. So what they do is they place the file on the same server where they export the data from. And from that server, they call our API. So we give the file to them already set up. We give them the config.json. They export the data and they use the PowerShell script to stage the data. So all that this process does, it stages the data. After this process is run, the data is in a database, staged, ready to be imported. No pre-import steps has been run. The standard import hasn't been run. Post-import, it's just there. We can import the data now. All right, so that, go back to my presentation. That is import.ps1 config.json. That is where it's located. Okay, so
Theuns, just a question. So with that process, you can import two types of files. So JSON files and CSVs. Is that correct? Or what does that use JSON setting mean in the config.json?
yeah, the use JSON is you can send the employee as a JSON, the employee list of employees as a JSON array.
Okay, so basically then you have a text file with a JSON array and it imports from that text file. Okay, that's quite nice. Okay.
Yeah, so you can send them one by one, or you can send them as a batch. What we have found is that if you send 50,000 employees as a JSON object, that is not going to work well. So it is easier and quicker to stage the data in a file and send that file to the API to stage much quicker.
I see. Okay, great. The stage process that's part of that file, does it also, can you place other URLs in that process? So calling other endpoints other than Sage's endpoint to get the JSON results.
The way it's written, Nardus, as far as I understood from code, it's only written for Sage.
I understand. Okay, thank you, Theuns.
But there are a few of our clients that use Sage for their payroll and employee data. So that's why we created it specifically for Sage. Okay.
I understand. Thank you.
Let's show the front end. Let me show the front end of the employee imports. So that is the second way that you stage the data, is you take that file and you can use the same file that you used for staging the data via the API, and you can import that file from the front end as well. So you'll see on Manage Employees, so all of the imports are on the system administration import data. The data is listed in COM import. All the imports are displayed when you go to import data, but for some of the imports, we have a front end, a button. Now, you can't see it here necessarily because the import, you have to set the ID of the employee import in a setting. Once you've done that, there will be a button here that says import employees. So instead of going to import data, you import it at the point of impact, same as training interventions. The same as event step 2, the attendees as well. There's a button at the point of impact. Okay, let me go just show the front end. So the set system administration, import data. And you'll see each of the files has a sample file. Each of the imports has a sample file as well. The clients download the sample file. You've used it in testing, Harvey?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me save this on my desktop. Okay. Have it here on the desktop. Let me just open and show the file. So for clients, it's populated with the minimum and maybe 1 or 2 extra fields, the minimum required fields. So you have, I think we have about 120 or 130 fields. So there's quite a lot of them. Not all of them obviously are needed, but you can specify the org, all 9 levels of the org. Birthday, race, ethnic, gender, job title. Important to note, this is job code and job title is not the same as position and position code, right? Position title and position code. If you specify a position code, that position code will be used in the validation. So if there's another position with the same position code, it will update that position's title. Okay, same with the org structure as well. If you use org codes, that means you're pointing to a specific existing org structure. Okay, you're either creating it from the start, but any import after that will update the org structure. Okay, so the code is the unique key link between the master data and the data on the system. Okay. You'll see there are start dates here as well. The start date is it over here? Yeah. Start date in company, start date in group, start date in position, termination date. So the start date in position may not overlap another appointment record of yours, else you will get an overlapping appointment history error. So I think I've said it recently or previously, but we don't try to interpret data as much as we did. If the data is not correct, it's not correct. We're not going to try to change it or interpret it to import it. It's not correct, it's not correct. If the position, if that is the only position that you're appointed in, and you make the appointment date later or earlier, it should work because it doesn't overlap any other appointments. You can make corrections, but only up until a point. There's the termination date, there's manager, reporting lines. So some of these fields are redundant or not used anymore. These fields in the reporting lines, the training manager name, you only actually need the training manager employee number. The name was placed there for the benefit of the client so that they know who they populate on the spreadsheet. Okay, because we don't all know employee numbers or other numbers out of offhand. Yes.
If there is a mistake, if the start and the end dates, if they do overlap with something, a record inside the database, no, but if it overlaps here, will it be picked up, or if the data
In the validation, we'll pick it up.
is it okay?
So there's two validations during the employee import that becomes a bit complex. The one is the appointment history, just to prevent you from importing overlapping appointment records. It has to do validation there. And the second one is the org validation. Because the org, level 1 to 9, must report to each other in that sequence as well. So if you have 9 org levels and each of them reports to each other, so org level 9 reports to 8, 8 reports to 7, and 3 to 2, and 2 to 1. And now you say, but org level 3 reports to 1, and it's not set up. If you remember the organization structure, the organization node types, there has to be a relationship between them. If you validate a relationship, it's going to say that there's an invalid relationship. So 3 can't report to 1 because that's not the way you set it up. You can set 3 up to report to 1, but it must be set up like that. 3 reports to 1, 2 reports to 1. That's fine. But now in the import, in your employee record, it says 1 reports to 2. It's going to fail the validation. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So there are a lot of fields in the import file. So let's use this employee. So let's change it to Harvey 1 to 3. Can we use your surname, Harvey?
Yes.
Okay, great. So on the front end, go to employee import file. And choose the file from my desktop. There it is. It's files in use. Let me just close it. I have to save it. I've saved it. Okay. File is in use. Let me really close it. I'm sorry. Great stuff. Save and preview. So there's our employee RV123. I verify that the preview of the above data is correct. We execute the import. Okay, so the import imports this employee. It creates the org, creates a position, all the data that is specified, but it also runs regular tasks. For instance, the employee import here has successfully been imported. So if I go and look for this employee, the employee will be visible in the system. There are other tasks that the employee import also does. Subgroups. If reporting lines change, the subgroup needs to change. If the org changes, the subgroup flat structure needs to be refreshed. Okay, so importing employees changes data in the system, as it also creates reporting lines and org structures. There's even the report to flat structure that needs to be refreshed. Okay, if I go look for this employee, correctly. There's RV. Great stuff. Always appointed in the system. That's what you want to see. If you see that, then you're happy. Okay. That is on the front end. A direct database connection. Who of you hasn't worked with linked servers before in SQL Server?
Link server.
Yeah.
Servers. No.
How do you mean link servers?
Yeah.
Apparently not.
You
Yeah.
might have, we just don't know the name or.
Let me see if I remember the passwords correctly. Let me share this screen. So you can select to join the following. We're on Cassia. Okay, so we're on Cassia. Under server object, we can create a linked server. Okay, so Juliet SQL 2014 is the QA server currently, not for long. SQL 2014 and SQL 2019 as well. Okay, that's maybe a better example. So I can run a query on Cassia on another database. And this is the way it is sometimes done at our clients as well. So they link the server, create a linked server on the one SQL server, and that link points to another SQL server. Okay, so I can run this query. I have to spell correctly. So it's server name dot database name dot owner. No, dot owner is not DBO. Dot account dot user. Is that correct? The backslash or forward slash. You just see. So Juliet backslash SQL 2019. Okay, I hope this is going to work. We have selected data from the other database server. So clients connect their actual, they don't always do it these days because of the security of data. Their database to the server where your system is installed on, and you can do a direct select from that server. So that would be a direct database connection that can give you an Oracle query that you can execute in SQL as well, Oracle or SAP query. Groundwater uses that. Okay. So what we do in the pre-import, we do additional tasks. We have to do data manipulation sometimes. For instance, you get a file from a client and there are leading and trailing spaces on the employee number. It's a stupid example, but you need to remove the leading and trailing spaces. Or the client gives you data and you have to manually insert a prefix before the employee number, like SM for small n. So you update the employee number in staging equals SM plus whatever the employee number was. Okay. This is done with a procedure that we have checked in. The procedure is empty. It's checked in and empty so that it can be used and customized at a client. Okay, so simply import custom client before import. Okay. Those of you who have seen this custom client task is also a custom procedure that we have that we check in, it's empty, and you can run, you can place SQL in it, and that task will run every day on a client. If you need to perform a custom task at a client. Okay, so I will get back at the end of the presentation to BlackRock's import SQL job. Then we can have a look at a real life example. The standard import, that's a procedure that is executed. So simply import underscore import. It uses a validation number. That is just used to group all relevant data together. Let me show you an example. Let's use, I'm just going to zoom in for on Rian's behalf because he can't see them. Okay. So invalid data. Okay, you'll see on my screen that the validation number or the run number, you can call it a run number. If the import runs at ARM now in the morning, the validation number is 892. If it runs again now in the afternoon, it's 893. And so it's just a different runs for the employee import. So in the invalid data, you'll see on the right-hand side, that's the validation number. So all validation number 3 groups together and was part of one import or import attempt. So validation, I'm just going to share the most important validation required fields. So you should be able to import an employee with only an employee number. Okay, that is the only required field. Doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really make sense, but it starts to make sense if the client uses the system for a learning management system and they want you just to log in with your ID number. You log in, you see the pathway, you do the training. But obviously they want to or need to report on the data as well. Most clients do. Okay. Organization structure validation. So does all of the org levels report to each other or not? Is that validated? If not, the whole record is rejected. So only the record where that error occurs, only that record is rejected.
Not all the rows.
Yeah. And not else we will import nothing. If you import 50,000 records, the chances are that is one record that's not going to import is very big. So only the offending records are not imported. There are front-end reports that the client can actually draw to see which records were rejected. Okay. Appointment history overlapping. That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. We only import primary positions, primary appointments, not secondary appointments. Okay. The table that I've just shown you shows the invalid data. So all of the data that was in sys-employee import, it was staged for import, that didn't pass validation, goes to sys-employee import, invalid data. Okay, the rest of the data is then sent to the standard import. Just to show one or two of these errors, validation errors. So just going to copy a few of them out. Start date in group cannot be after start date in company. Start date in company cannot be after start date in position. So they have to follow a certain sequence. Yeah. They all can be, the start date can all be the same date. That's another example here. There's something else that looks different, but that's, we do get that. What's this? One or more of this employee's organization unit codes are linked to more than one parent. And so in the import file, the employee's org structure has 3 levels, A, B, and C. Oh, sorry, A, B, A, and C. So it says C reports to A and B reports to A. Okay, so an org node can only have one parent. But according to the data that you've given us, this child has more than one parent. Okay. Okay. Just to stress invalid data. No, I'm kidding. I wanted to say the backup data. So the backup data is where you make a backup before you do any validation and remove records. Okay. Any questions on the input so far, William? Does it make sense?
Yeah, so far.
Okay. So regular tasks after the import, refresh manager subgroup, refresh the organization flat structure, refresh the reporting flat structure, and create users from employees. Who of you have seen the report to flat structure table? You've seen the org flat structure. This is the following. Report to flat structure. If you look at the table, it shows the employee and the manager the employee reports to. Let's get my pointer here. It shows the employee, it shows the manager the employee reports to, what the reporting line is. In this case, it's a performance manager. Is the employee a direct report? Okay, if that is 0, it means that it's Rian's case. The employee report to a direct report reporting to you or somewhere down the line. So if you want to select everybody that reports to this manager, let's say, for instance, a department head. The department head has 3 people reporting to them, but below them, there's a structure. You want to select everybody in that structure all the way down. You'll say direct report equals 0. Okay, and 1, obviously, the and 1, because both of them one is just the 3 direct reports to the department head. Okay. There's also a flag that says whether this is the lowest level. In other words, does this employee have somebody reporting to them? And this flat structure is built with the same way actually that the org flat structure is built recursively from the top down. Obviously, what happens if there's a break in that tree? Procedure goes into an endless loop, right? That is not, we limit it. We limit it. So only limit it to 32 levels.
Okay.
So if there are more levels than that, so even if you say A reports to B, B reports to A, we only do that dance 32 times before we stop. Because it is possible to do that. It's possible to set the data up like that. Because you can import it like that. If the import had to do with that validation as well, to see what the end result data would do like, then the import wouldn't finish. Okay, that validation would be very heavy. And that is the post import. Okay, let me show you the BlackRock import. So this is BlackRock server. Signify is around dash employee import. They have a partial import as well, where they only import the changes that occur during the day. So, but I have a full sync that happens each morning. I think at 4:45. So the first step in this import will be to get the data from ODI. Now, ODI is not an abbreviation for One Day International. It is Oracle Data Integration. So this is a procedure that was written that gets the data from a linked server, okay, to stage the data. Let me do the following. Let me open that procedure. I'm going to come back to it in a moment. Okay. Sorry. Well, cannot. There's been quite a few changes to this procedure. But you'll see there's a linked server, BlackRock, mine, Oracle Data Integration, .om integration, .dbo, .employee contact information. Okay, so that's a linked server that is also available at BlackRock, where we get the data from. Okay, and this procedure, or the purpose of this procedure, is actually just to stage the data. So it looks like a lot of lines of code, but it's not overly complex. Okay. The stages the data, and then the employee import is executed. Okay. Okay, so this procedure is executed and it actually has the pre-import and the post-import steps in this procedure. Okay. What is an example? Let me open this one just out of interest's sake. When I create the app where my cursor flickers. Okay, controls the employee import. So what does it do? Custom client before import, standard import, custom client after import. So here is a procedure that also sends a notification from the database once the import completes. Okay. It actually sends all the rejections to a specific email address. So it's a good example of a task to execute after the employee import. Okay, with this specific import, you will see that this import actually runs more than once. It imports employees and then it imports a different set of data for contingent workers, which are contractors. So that is what the preceding steps are for. Step 3 and 4. It actually also imports employee qualifications and sends rejection email. Okay, but basically, stage the data, we do pre-import steps on the data, we do the standard import, and then we do post-import steps. Okay. Are there any questions on the employee import?
It's quite straightforward.
That ARM import, is that the one where the rules get broken for?
They do. They do. We have a few minutes. Let me show you how you break a rule. No. I'm probably gonna have to delve a bit deeper into this import to show you that. Let me do that. So that is where you write this for the following step. Yes, this is where you get the information from probably. Yes, so very old stuff. Piece of code. Get to this back to this step. Nope, not executing. Sorry. Let me just. Okay, stopped it. Then press enter. Okay. There we are. That is the procedure that is executed. The contingent worker control. And custom client task with custom client task, blah, blah. Here's the log. We select the data, back up the current data, prepare and import. That won't happen in the standard import. Import alternative contingent workers. Save the stage the data. It's invalidated. Contingent workers, custom. So we're looking for the appointment history. Also first stage the date now. And I haven't seen this procedure for a while, I'm gonna find it now. Import custom fields with update object IDs. Now here it is. Import alternative schema appointment information. Here are the new appointments, and here is where you set the appointment history records for the new appointments. So the new appointments are determined here. The appointment history record obviously mustn't exist. Okay, so this is where it's done. Okay, any other questions on the employee import? Yeah.
No, just say the linked servers. But I did not know that's possible. Thank you.
Mm. Okay, William, Nardes, Gert, anything from your side?
I'm good, thank you.
And Jock.
Nothing from my end.
Also good,
Thanks.
thank you.
All good, thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time. See you in the next module mastering.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Theuns.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.